have you here. I am Corinna Bellizzi, an omega-3 expert and head of sales and marketing for Örlö Nutrition. Örlö Nutrition is a leader in the algae space, harnessing its full nutrition and power through technology and optimized growing conditions at our carbon-negative plant in Iceland. We offer vegan solutions to replace the nutrient power of animal-sourced products with better performance through better absorption, so you get all of the health benefits without the worry. We'll get into how our algae-sourced omega-3s are different in today's discussion as we dive into health-promoting fats. Today, I am joined by Dr. William Li, who is a world-renowned doctor, scientist, founder and president of the Angiogenesis Foundation, and now two-time New York Times bestselling author of Eat to Beat Disease and Eat to Beat Your Diet. I've had the privilege of getting to know Dr. Li as he has been a guest on our podcast, Nutrition Without Compromise, multiple times. Hello, Dr. Li. It is so great to see you again.
Hey, Corinna, it's great to see you. I am so happy to be joining you today and talking as usual about one of our mutual favorite topics, which is omega-3s.
Yeah. Well, I think we should jump right in with something that is important for most people to just get to the root of and understand. And one of the very reasons that Örlö Nutrition and omega-3s can be so powerful, and that's simply that Americans are so very deficient in omega-3s. On average, we consume 15 times more omega-6 than omega-3s, which sets us up for major inflammation issues. So before we go any further, can you help us break this down and understand better why it's important to focus on reducing that inflammation and overall why we look to omega-3s to help support this process?
Yeah, well, so omega-3s, omega-6s are really just words, names that describe polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are healthier forms of fat that are important for our body. And the fact is that we need both omega-3s and omega-6s. The problem, as you just mentioned, is that we in sort of modern societies tend to eat way too many omega-6s. And just like everything else in health, when you're out of balance and when you have too much of one and not enough of another, that extreme, especially with omega-6, sets us up for inflammation. But let's go ahead and take a look at omega-3s, which are the beneficial healthy fats of PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, that we tend not to get enough of. So, omega-3s are a family of fatty acids. They're sort of EPA or eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, or DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid. And these actually originally come from algae and plankton and sort of plants of the sea, as I like to call them. And little critters, little fish, little shellfish eat the algae and the plankton. They build up the omega-3s in their bodies, which then are eaten by larger fish. And then you go up the food chain, the smaller fish are eaten by the next larger fish, and so on and so forth. And of course, then the fish that we tend to eat, especially the ones that are well known to be filled with healthy fats, as they say, the salmon, the tuna, or the mackerels, these are predatory fish, the so-called oily fish, wind up actually accumulating these omega-3s in their flesh. And that's what makes seafood actually healthy. But you can also get omega-3s from dietary supplements. And I think that's very important because not everybody is used to eating, or sometimes people just can't eat or can't get the types of seafoods that actually contain them. I also want to say that you can get omega-3s from eating plant-based foods, because some plant-based foods, like chia seeds and flax seeds and walnuts and Brussels sprouts, they actually have the precursor to omega-3s that when you eat them, your body can make some omega-3s as well, although not very much. And so there's different ways of getting omega-3s. And the reason I, as a scientist and a doctor, tell people, including my patients, that omega-3s are important to know about and important to consume is because we know they help cardiovascular health. They're associated with a lower risk of heart disease. They improve your circulation, which is important whether you're a young person who's physically active, you need more blood flow to your muscles on one hand, but on the other hand, there are people that are older that need better blood flow to their brain and other organs as well. But when we think about good cognition, we want to be able to actually be vital and functional for as long as we're able to with our lifespan. omega-3s play a role there as well. Now, the one thing about omega-3s that is helpful no matter what is they lower inflammation. Lowering inflammation protects us essentially from many of the chronic diseases that are fueled or sparked, triggered by inflammation. So it's a countermeasure against chronic disease. And on top of that, the recent research has shown that omega-3s can protect our stem cells. These are the cells inside our body that allow us to regenerate and heal and repair our organs from the inside out. And when it comes to metabolism, it turns out omega-3s play a role there too. Omega-3s activate a special kind of body fat called brown fat in all of our bodies. This is a good fat. So if omega-3s are a kind of good fat we eat, it activates a kind of good fat that we have inside our body. It's plastered around our neck, under our breastbone, underneath our arms. And this good fat burns down, improves our metabolism, burns down harmful visceral fat, which also lowers inflammation. So here's what we're talking about. These are healthy fats that you can get from various types of food sources or dietary supplements that are so important in our modern knowledge of health.
Well, you mentioned seafood here because seafood is a direct source of EPA and DHA. But one of the things I've often heard from people is, well, I had my fish and chips. They're not eating necessarily the right kind of fish. They're eating a fish that perhaps is one that's prepared and not something that's as high in the omega-3s, EPA and DHA. I even joked with Dr. Bill Harris, who's an omega-3 researcher, about it. It's like we almost want a litmus test so we can touch a piece of paper to the salmon or to the fish before we eat it that tells us its EPA and DHA levels so we know how much we're getting. So I've heard it referred to as smash fish, meaning sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. But so few Americans really eat enough of these. So this means that we need to kind of open the doors to what other sources we might want to go to. I'm curious to know how you guide people on that journey in particular, and what health benefits people can expect if they're able to actually do that.
Yeah. Well, the latest research actually shows that while the oiliest of oily fish, like the smash fish you just described, the salmon, mackerel, anchovies, and herring, it's true that the oilier it is, the more omega-3s it is. But actually, more recent research shows that you don't, in nature and in physiology for health, more isn't always more. And it turns out that more recent research has shown even a piece of cod, which is considered a not very oily fish, has enough omega-3s to actually do you some good. So if you want to actually enjoy seafood because of the omega-3, don't shy away from having cod, halibut, mussels, even clams, even shrimp actually have omega-3s. And that's one of the things that I wrote about in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, are the doses of the foods that may not come across as very oily, but actually have enough to actually improve your metabolism. What does that mean? Well, it turns out when you actually activate your metabolism, you burn down harmful body fat, you can shrink your waistline, your body tube actually gets a little bit tighter, and it lowers inflammation. The key, though, I think what you're talking about is like not everybody enjoys fish. Not everybody's used to eating fish. And part of the reason that we're so deficient in omega-3s, for example, in places like the United States of America, is that people are not just not eating enough seafood, they're not eating enough seafood regularly. So if you compare certain countries like the Mediterranean, where they eat a lot of fish, all right, it adds up the amount of omega-3s that you eat over time. And this is why, some studies, like there's one study of 7,100 individuals living across Italy. It's a country that eats a lot of fresh fish and even tinned fish. The omega-3s build up, and they wind up having lower incidences of inflammatory diseases, including cancer. In fact, it was one study that showed a 34% lower risk of developing colon cancer with avid fish eaters, including tinned fish. However, let's say that's, and about 3 times a week is kind of what you need, but not everybody does it. And so what I try to guide people to do is to say, you can get your omega-3s from eating seafood. got to choose your seafood wisely and hopefully get it sustainably fished. Prepare them in ways that are healthy-est, not just, you don't want to take a healthy piece of fish and deep fry it. Now you've turned something healthy into something less healthy. Cook it prepare it in a healthy way. But also, if you wanted to, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you want to get it from plants, there's a plant choice. But if you want to make it as easy as possible, and this is something that I actually do myself, I'll take omega-3 supplements because I know that's a way for me to regularly get a dose that will actually help build up those levels in my body. It's that important to me to be able to keep up my omega-3 levels.
That's really amazing. Now, I personally, I've consumed a lot of fish over the years, but over the course of the past about 6 months, have started to consume less of it just because I personally am a little concerned about toxin levels that might exist in some of the fish that I enjoy. And also because I'm concerned about overfishing in some species. And sometimes commercial fishing can be a real issue if you're not getting local, if you're not getting fresh. And some people live in landlocked areas where they just don't have faith that it's going to be as fresh. So I've taken this path of going more to supplements and to taking an algae omega-3 on an almost daily basis, and 2, sometimes 3 soft gels, moving up my dosage a little bit because I'm concerned about getting enough and concerned about ensuring that I can even reach this ideal 8% where you actually have a saturated level in your tissues that is associated with a fall in all-cause mortality, which I'm interested in, and also to ensure that my bioavailability is really strong. So one of the things that's unique about Örlö Nutrition's omega-3s is that we're actually providing the omega-3s in that polar lipid form, which is better absorbed by the tissues, which means that people don't necessarily have some of the negative aspects, like let's say a fishy burp or digestive issues. They can also take it anytime, day or night, with or without food. And normally, if you're just taking a supplement, I would advise people to say, look, you're taking your omega-3 fish oil, eat it with food, just like I would with a vitamin D or a vitamin A or vitamin K, because these fat soluble nutrients are better absorbed when you consume them with food because you just slow down your digestion, you get more out of them, right? But being that it's in this polar lipid form, it can get into your tissues more quickly. I can even take them with like a hot cup of coffee and I don't have a negative response, which is something that didn't exist for me when I just took fish oils. So I'm curious to know if you were to look at this style of a product, what you would say to your audience about that, and specifically like taking a polar lipid from an algae source.
One of the things that I think is very clever about the polar lipid version of omega-3s is to improve your body's ability to absorb it. It's like a sponge that will actually clean a surface even better. We've all worked with different types of cloth and we're trying to absorb things off of a kitchen counter or something. And here's a case where you're able to take advantage of these polar lipids to get it more avidly better absorbed into our body. So who wouldn't want that? Because, we all lose some of the good stuff we eat just by trickling it down. So the more we can absorb, whether it's from our gut into our bloodstream, from our bloodstream into our tissues, I think when it comes to omega-3s, it's precious enough from a health value perspective. I wouldn't want to waste any. So I really like that idea. And I think it also speaks to the fact that not all omega-3s are all the same. So read the label and try to understand what are the advantages that any particular version is offering to you. We're all pretty smart people. We're savvy consumers. If you're taking a look at opening a box of something or a jar of something that supposedly is really good for you, you'd want to take a look at the ingredients and describe what it is that is actually special about that particular one. When you've got choices, and I think this is an example of where the polar lipids make sense.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm excited about, an offer that's really unique to Örlö Nutrition, is that we're telling people you can test, don't guess. And so we're launching this campaign called the Tested by You campaign, where we're providing an omega-3 index test so people can test their baseline and then test again after 4 months of supplementation. And typically researchers like yourself would say, make a change, go about that for 3 or 4 months, and then check again and see how you're doing. And this is actually a way for consumers, whether you be vegan, whether you be consuming fish, to check where you are today, and see how you are a few months down the road and then make any adjustments from there. These tests go for about $50 a piece. If you try to get them covered through medical insurance, sometimes they double that price. So, it's a big investment on our part, but we're doing it because we have that much faith in the product. So we're putting our money where our mouth is to show people that they can see a difference with time. And not only will they see a difference in how they feel, they'll see it in the numbers. So test, don't guess.
Right. Well, I think that anything that allows to measure our baseline and progress is an important way of monitoring our health. And, as a medical doctor, there's a lot of things that we do as baselines. This is why people do colonoscopies. That's why we do a blood test and a checkup. And here's an example of measuring something that your doctor might not automatically measure that you can actually get yourself to be able to see how well you're doing. And certainly it's a bigger incentive, a motive to try to get your levels up. So you won't know if your levels up. You won't know if you're scoring high, you're well on your way there, or if you're low and you have a ways to go and need to try a little bit harder. That's where a spot test for omega-3s can be really useful.
Yeah. And these are easy to take too. So I don't want people to get overly concerned about what it might involve. It's just a simple finger prick. You put your little blood spot on a card, you register it online, and then you send it in. So there's no additional cost that needs to be exchanged. And ultimately, you get your results back in your inbox 5 days after Omega Quant receives it. It's third party. So it's not like it's something that Örlö specifically is offering. We're just partnered with them because, again, we believe we can show you a difference. And this is something that I've never seen anybody as a company really do before. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great value add to help people benefit from omega-3s. We need to get this message out as much, more and more. Omega-3s are important. Other supplements can be really important as well. This is, not from my perspective, it's really emphasizing just how important it is to be able to up our game. And when it comes to omega-3, our body doesn't naturally make it. So something that we know for a fact, the evidence is there that it can help our health. We should get it however we can. If you're a seafood lover, go for it. If you want to explore it, go for it. If you're vegan or vegetarian and you want to get it from plants, look, that's a good way to do it. Choose it. Look up the plants that actually do it. But because your body doesn't make very much of it from plants, you're probably going to want to supplement it. And if you want to just kind of go for the supplements, this is, one of those exceptions. I'm somebody that rarely puts supplements before food. But in this particular case, if you want to make it a no-brainer to be able to get those healthy omega-3s, get it. The polar lipid is excellent, and get a blood test, because then you can actually, the prick test, and now you can actually figure out where you stand.
Right. Well, I personally took my test after 4 months of not consuming fish, and I wasn't in the perfect spot. I came in at 6.37%. The ideal is 8 to 12%. So now I personally know what I need to work towards. I've made the choice to, instead of just taking 2 soft gels a day, most days I'm taking 3. And I did something else. I took walnuts and I added them to my smoothies every morning. Walnuts is one of the most powerful omega-3 sources from terrestrial sources. So I'm doing 2 things at the same time. I'm going to retest myself after 4 months of doing this almost every day, right? And because I don't have a smoothie every day, but close to every day I have one. It's a treat. It's a way to get extra protein. And then I'm also infusing myself with some more walnuts, right? And then I can see if I've got to that ideal of 8% or if I need to make another adjustment. And so I think that is just critical for people to understand. It doesn't have to break the bank. You can buy this test for $50 directly from Omega Quant, even if your insurance doesn't cover it, and then just add it to the repertoire. You can bring it to your doctor and talk about it to them, and the next time you have a session. So this is something that's a tool for you. And I really feel like putting people's health in their own hands is everything that your work is about. So I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Li, for everything that you offer your community and that you've offered ours. And just to point people to your website too, for anybody who wants to learn more, that's www.drwilliamli.com. And of course, you can come to orlonutrition.com as well, and our Tested by You page for all the information you could need about subscribing to this particular program. And again, getting 2 free tests over the course of your first 6 months of subscription. you'll essentially be getting all the benefit of the omegas and the assurance that you're making a difference through third-party analysis. Thank you so much for this time today.
Thank you so much, Corinna, and thanks for everyone for joining us today.